So I'm John Yoder. I'm representing Salem Environmental Education, the proud host of the event today. Our mission is to support community through environmental education. We do that through all volunteer staff. We have no paid staff. And all of our programs, K through high school, are all free, and we target especially underserved, underrepresented schools and populations. Programs such as outdoor school, E-STEM or environmental STEM we do in the schools, after-school programs. We're starting a new one, Strolling with Strollers for young moms in Minto Brown. And we have adult programs as well, pub talks at Taproot, clamming, kayaking, other adventures. So go to our website at salemee.org and look at the many programs that we offer. We want to thank Nathan Good Architects for being a sponsors today. So Nathan and your table, thank you. Salem Grand Hotel, Christy Reed, Christy. And John Miller with Wildwood Mahonia, where you're here somewhere, thank you. And a special thanks to Marion County Environmental Services EarthWISE program, which is really the drive behind the event today. So thank you to all those sponsors that help provide this event. We also want to thank Michelle Cordova of Willamette Heritage Center. She's the new executive director here, I guess not that new. But if you're interested in programs or other things with the center, you can visit with Michelle afterwards. So thank you for having such a wonderful facility for us today. And our caterers, Better Than Mamas, that's Joy that's running back and forth. I'm not sure you know how incredibly difficult it is to facilitate all the special meal orders, from no beans to no tomatoes to dairy with meat to dairy without meat. So they're doing a great job of trying to help honor your dietary needs and wishes. So if you have something that needs yet, raise your hand and they'll be over to do that. With that, I think I'm going to allow Rachel to introduce herself and talk a little bit about her work. Rachel?
Thank you, everyone, for braving our lovely, mild March weather today. My name is Rachel Van Wert, and I am one of the new waste reduction coordinators at Marion County. I work with the EarthWISE program, which is a certification for sustainable businesses here in Marion County. If you're not familiar with the EarthWISE program, it began in 2007 when Marion County saw the value in looking at our businesses that are innovative and forward-thinking. We work with our businesses to look at things from reduction, recycling, lean ordering, water. I love doing trash audits. You can find me in a dumpster if you want me. It's just fun. It's a hobby. But what that has created right now is a network of 139 businesses in Marion County whose core goals are the triple bottom line of people, profits, and why did I just jump that? People, profits, and planet. I wanted to put environmental, but that's okay. Thinking it out. This year, we're very excited with EarthWISE going into its 12th year. Our goal is to create a better, stronger network for you all, bring in new businesses and industries, provide resources for you guys to keep having conversations and digging a little deeper in your businesses, ways to save money, ways to reduce what is going in or should not be going into your trash. We appreciate you. Having a healthy business community is the key to having a healthy community. So we thank you all for the time and the effort that you put into your business plans to include sustainability in it. We are going to kind of move through the schedule a little bit today. We're going to let you work on lunch, have a few more minutes of chatting, and then I will be introducing our keynote speaker for the evening. And she is amazing. I've gotten to do webinars and hear her talk, so for me getting to see her in person is quite exciting. After that, we will be moving into the EarthWISE Sustainability Green Awards and the SEE Green Awards as well. So enjoy your lunch, and we'll be talking with you soon. Thank you. I am thrilled that our guest speaker was able to join us today. She is a seasoned sustainability professional with more than 20 years' experience supporting the design and implementation of successful environment and energy efficiency programs, both here in the U.S. and in Asia. Her knowledge comes with a strong emphasis on sustainability and partnership between government and private sector. Currently, her work with the DEQ focuses on material management, and we are pleased to be able to have her talk with us today on materials, why they matter in striving for sustainability. So please give a warm welcome to our speaker, Elaine Bunn.
Can everyone hear me? Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for asking me here to speak to your luncheon today and to be with you to celebrate the achievements of sustainable business leaders in Marion County. What I'd like to focus on in my presentation is one of several important ways which businesses can lead in the effort to achieve healthy environment, one that can be sustained and which allows for a sustainable future for all the people on our planet. What I want to talk about specifically is materials. Materials are all that stuff that flows through commerce that we make and sell, that fill our stores, and that ultimately fill our landfills. Materials matter, and our current use of materials is deeply unsustainable. In the past 50 years, humans have consumed more resources than in all of the previous history. Our economy is very much tied, as you know, to global markets for these materials, and competition and prices for these materials are increasing. The materials we're using are also changing. In 1900, 41% of the materials used in the economy were renewable. By 1995, only 6% were. That dependence means that our economy is fundamentally not sustainable. And with the dependence comes risks, and not only to our economy, but also to our national security. That's why the Pentagon has become very interested in e-waste as an alternative to sources of strategically important rare earth metals that are otherwise largely controlled by China. And we'll be talking a bit more about China in a couple minutes. Finally, the rapid rise in material use has led to serious environmental effects, including climate change, impacts of toxic chemicals, acidification, loss of soil fertility, nutrient imbalances in oceans and lakes, resource depletion, and the decline of biodiversity and natural capital that is the basis not only for our economy, but for life itself. So just to give you a better sense of the impact of materials, here's an example focusing on greenhouse gas emissions. This graph shows how the distribution of greenhouse gas emissions associated with different systems are divided. We often think about greenhouse gas impacts as coming primarily from transportation and building operations, and that's certainly true. As you can see in this graph, those two systems account for almost 50% of emissions. But just look at the upstream emissions from materials, 40%. These are emissions upstream of the consumer, the emissions that occur in the production, manufacturing, and transportation of these materials. Downstream impacts from materials, which primarily occur in landfills and wastewater, are only 2%. Recycling is perhaps best understood by all of us and most widely promoted as the means of reducing the environmental impacts of materials. Recycling is widely understood to be a better way of managing waste and of keeping waste out of landfills. Indeed, landfills loom large in the court of public opinion. And I know you all are familiar with that. But if that's all that recycling is, then its potential is limited indeed. Look at how small landfill emissions are. As I mentioned, 2% out of all of our emissions. But fortunately, recycling's benefits aren't limited to landfill avoidance. In fact, most of the benefits of recycling are elsewhere. And thinking of recycling as a solution to landfills is a root driver for many of the major problems facing recycling this year, and I'm going to talk more about those in just a minute. Oops. So we can and have calculated the benefits of recycling in Oregon. First, recycling has saved a lot of energy. In fact, the equivalent of about 220 million gallons of gasoline. Second, Recovery of materials in Oregon has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by an enormous amount, the equivalent of about 690 average passenger cars. But the benefits are all largely upstream, meaning that recycling materials reduces production impacts, as reported here primarily through reduced energy, thinking about aluminum can recycling, for example, and also some reduced impacts associated with virgin resources that are not needed to be used. Think about paper. But to realize those upstream benefits, the system of recycling, collection, and sorting needs to be able to provide industrial end users with materials they can actually use in lieu of virgin feedstocks. For example, Epson can't make printer cartridges out of plastic if there are wood chips mixed in. Similarly, industrial producers of steel, paper, plastic, and aluminum and glass cannot produce usable materials for commerce when we put materials in our recycling containers that don't belong there. So how much of a problem is this? I'm going to provide a local example, and this is real. So down the Columbia River from Portland is Norpac, a paper mill, and some of you may be familiar with it. It produces 750,000 tons of paper annually. It used to buy waste paper from all across the country. That paper came from sources that segregated it from other materials. And Norpac actually invested millions of dollars in capital upgrades and additional maintenance so that it could take that waste paper and recycle it. And it did it because making paper from recycled feedstocks was cheaper, because it saved them energy. But something important happened, and DEQ takes a little credit for this ourselves. To make recycling easier, cities started collecting recyclables mixed together, and facilities that sort mixed recyclables couldn't keep pace with the chaos that household and businesses tossed into their carts. All kinds of trash ended up getting shipped to paper mills like Norpac. And here's what happened in the case of Norpac. By 2010, for every 100 tons of paper produced, the mill had more than 20 tons of garbage coming out of its pulper. This graph shows pulper rejects as a percentage of production, and as you can see, there's a steady upward trajectory. The costs of managing this contamination grew too high, and Norpac switched back to using virgin feedstock. Recycling failed at Norpac because of contamination that the recycling community, and as I said, including DEQ, failed to adequately address. Why? Because we could always send our recyclables to China. But unfortunately, China doesn't want our trash anymore. And I think this is an issue that many of you in the audience are familiar with already. That after making threats, the Chinese government finally cracked down hard on imports of waste, eventually banning the importation of all post-consumer whole container plastics, as well as mixed waste paper. There's a short version of a film called Plastics China that I encourage you to take a look on YouTube that you can view for free, and it really gives an understanding of the poor conditions for sorting plastic waste in China, the human impact, as well as some unwanted environmental impacts. Mixed paper, to connect us back to the Norpac example I just mentioned, while less visible, is also an even greater problem because we've been exporting much larger quantities of that paper to China. I can't overstate the severe impact China's actions have had on recycling. Until recently, China was the largest buyer of Oregon's bales of mixed plastic and paper. The door has now been slammed shut. Local governments and recycling businesses are now scrambling to find alternatives. Downstate, some cities have had to cut back on what they'll accept in their recycling programs. While China's actions have severely upset recycling collection programs, especially in the Western US, it's DEQ's position that China's actions were actually appropriate as a means of protecting its own environment. After all, that's what recycling is supposed to do, right? Recycling needs to be performed responsibly. Otherwise, it can make the environment worse, and nobody wants that. So back here in the US, we need to stop thinking about the recycling cart as just another way of managing our trash, and instead approach recycling collection in a whole new way. Or perhaps that this is actually an old-fashioned way of thinking about recycling, as a means of providing industry with clean materials that it can use to produce new products without using virgin feedstock. That's where the environmental value of recycling is, and that's how generators of waste, all of us, should be approaching recycling. If you have materials you want to recycle, don't put them in the bin unless you're confident that they belong there. Wishful recycling creates significant economic impacts, imperils the economic viability of recycling, and can eventually lead to dumping of mixed, contaminated bales, thereby damaging the environment. So you may have figured I was leading into this. Recycling is necessary, but insufficient. I don't mean to suggest that we abandon recycling just because of these challenges, because recycling done right is beneficial. But we also need to acknowledge the limitations of recycling. Back to this graph we looked at a bit earlier. 42% of the nation's greenhouse gas emissions are associated with materials, assuming a 32% recovery rate. What would happen to that impact if we achieved the nirvana that I know lots of you have heard people talking about of zero waste and recycled or composted almost all of them? Well, assuming a very high recovery rate, and that's about 95% of all municipal solid waste and 70% of construction and demolition debris, we'd save an additional 6%. So while there's some gains to be made by recycling more, those gains are relatively small. Another reason that, so greenhouse gases are not the only impact of materials, but they're an important consideration. Consider the oceans, for example, and marine debris and plastics in the oceans is a topic that's on a lot of people's minds right now. Some of you may recall that back in 2014, tens of thousands of auklet carcasses washed up on beaches from California to British Columbia. What killed those seabirds? Was it plastic straws? Was it non-compostable food serviceware? No. Researchers at the University of Washington concluded that the culprit here was global warming, the giant warm blob off our coast that upended the marine food chain and caused mass starvation among these birds. Better recycling wouldn't have halted that die-off. But let's talk a bit more about plastics in the ocean, since we're there, and marine debris, because it is a topic of a great deal of interest right now. In 2010, about 80,000 tons of plastic entered the ocean directly from US shores. That's 80,000 tons too much, but it's really actually about less than 1% of the global total of marine plastic debris. That same year, the United States exported more than 5 times as much plastic for recycling to countries like China, countries that actually are major sources of marine debris. And some of that plastic, low value and highly contaminated plastics, didn't get recycled. And if it wasn't recycled, where do you suppose it went? So just look here at the numbers for China, and then you get a sense of what might have gone into the sea at almost 30% of total mismanaged plastic waste. You can bet a good deal of that ended up in the ocean. So while any amount of plastics going into the ocean is just too much, these contrasts in scale show that recycling in this country is not a meaningful solution to the global problem of marine debris. If we sincerely want to protect our oceans, we need to support solutions to marine debris in places where most marine plastic originates, like countries in Asia and Africa. And we also need to reduce greenhouse gases to avoid what happened to those seabirds off the West Coast. But we clearly need some additional tools. And as we consider possible solutions, we need to avoid unintended consequences, such as switching from non-recyclable materials to recyclable materials that may increase global warming and in fact contribute to ocean eutrophication and even greater threats to marine life. So what possible solutions could we look at? How do we get beyond recycling? One area, and that's where I'm going to continue on for the rest of my talk, is waste prevention. And that's the reduce and reuse part of the reduce, reuse, recycle hierarchy. And I want to illustrate the value of waste prevention with an example related to drinking water and how people get it. On this graph, you'll see the relative impacts of distributing drinking water in PET single-use plastic bottles that are recyclable. And there's a comparison here of the impacts based on different recycling rates. The blue bar represents the normalized impacts of a bottle, assuming a 37% recycling rate, so that's going to be our baseline for this discussion. Then if you look at the red bar, that will show you the benefits of increasing our recycling rate from 37% to 62%. There are some modest gains. Note there's no change to the carcinogenic potential of those bottles, and there's no change to the ecotoxicity potential of those bottles, because those impacts occur in the production of the bottles upstream. So improving our recycling rate doesn't actually improve the impact of those bottles in those regards at all. And the improvements on the other bars are desirable, but not particularly large. Let's compare that now to another alternative to those particular bottles, and that's a different solution, and that's lightweighting bottles. And that's the process of literally making plastic bottles out of thinner plastic, and so it takes fewer resources to make. There's still PET bottles, they're still recyclable, and they're still single use. The green bars here show us that assuming a 62% recycling rate, again, let's assume that we're doing very well, there are still more gains to be made through this lightweighting process. This time actually including the carcinogenic potential and ecotoxic potential, because you're literally using less material now to make the bottles. So that's good. That's an improvement, and that's something to be happy about. But let's look at an even better alternative, and that's to stop using these single-use plastic bottles at all. And I'm going to show you some data about delivery of tap water in reusable bottles. The impacts of delivering tap water through reusable bottles are shown in the aqua bars here. They're significantly lower than impacts from the PET bottles across all of the areas that we measured. And that's because, and note, actually, I wanted to note that for this aqua bar, we've labeled tap water as worst case. And that's because these aqua bars represent the worst case scenario for tap water in reusable bottles. And by that we meant people are washing them every day in not energy efficient dishwashers, and that the dishwashers are only half full. So worst case scenario, you still get all of these benefits from using tap water in a reusable bottle. But look what happens if you go to the best case, which is washing your bottle, perhaps not every day. I don't wash my bottle every day, maybe that's bad. But also washing your bottle in an efficient dishwasher and filling it when you do. When we looked at the best case scenario for tap water, the impacts reduced even more. They're there. If you squint really hard, you can see the orange bars in these graphs, which show you the negligible environmental impact of drinking tap water out of reusable containers if those containers are handled in an efficient and eco-friendly manner. So that's one solution. Let's all just keep drinking water out of reusable bottles. I'm guessing a lot of you do that already. But I will point out that water in PET bottles is one of the fastest growing parts of the drinking liquids industry. So Coca-Cola drinking is going down, but bottled water rates are going up. So we still have a ways to go. But another waste prevention example, and one that's near and dear to my heart because I focus a lot on food at DEQ, involves food. Our region is working hard to increase the collection and recovery of food waste, and that's really good via composting and anaerobic digestion. But that can't be our primary focus for reducing the impacts of food. Paul Hawkins' book, Project Drawdown, recently ranked 100 global solutions according to their relative potential in reducing global greenhouse gas emissions. Food waste composting ranked number 60. That's great. And large methane digesters ranked number 30, which is also pretty good. But changing from our traditional meat-based diet to a plant-rich diet ranked number 4. And get this, prevention of food waste in the first place ranked number 3 on the list of the 100 most important global solutions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And for that reason, food waste is getting a lot of attention. But why might it be true that preventing the wasting of food rated so high on Paul Hawkins' list? Let's look at some numbers. This portion of this graph shows the landfill emissions coming from 1 ton of food waste deposited in a landfill. It's about a half ton. So keeping that stuff out of the landfill is actually a really good thing, and we really want to keep working at it. And so taking it out by composting or through anaerobic digestion produces really substantial benefits. And the benefits you see here are the half ton of that bar that's sticking up above zero, plus some additional benefits below the line that you get from composting because of the nutrient generation that it creates that goes back into soils, or from anaerobic digestion because of the cleaner energy that it produces. But let's look at one last bar. That's the greenhouse gas reduction potential from preventing the wasting of food in the first place. And that potential exists because there's significant greenhouse gas production in the production of food itself. And every time we waste a pound of food, we're wasting all of that and the many other resources that went into producing that food in the first place. So we need solutions that look at the full life cycle of materials, as you see here. Those are solutions that will include solutions at the end of life or waste management. And those are important, as I've shown, but they're also insufficient. Despite that, we continue to focus so much of our energy there. Instead, we need to look across this full life cycle of materials, understanding how each of these stages impacts the environment, focusing on where the big impacts are, and taking actions everywhere across the full life cycle of materials is what we call at DEQ sustainable materials management. The solutions we need now the solutions we need now involve how we manage discards, but also what we buy, how we use the stuff, and how businesses design, make, and sell materials. And that's a lot harder to do. But if we want a healthy environment, we don't have any choice but to look at these bigger issues. Now, one of the challenges of taking this broader-based approach is that it requires us to unlearn some deeply held beliefs that DEQ has played a part in creating. But here's an example. So this is an analysis that EPA did on coffee packaging materials, and it's really quite instructive. As we've mentioned more than once, recycling is definitely good for the environment. So you might intuitively believe, when you go to the grocery store, that more recycling is better for the environment, and that in order to recycle more, we need a more recyclable waste stream. So therefore, you go to the supermarket and you look at packaging and you're looking for something that is recyclable, and you assume that that's the better alternative. But that assumption can be checked using an accounting method tool called Lifecycle Assessment, or LCA. LCA quantifies the environmental impacts of a material across its full life. And here, this example that EPA provided us is instructive. If you look at the first column after the pictures of these different coffee packaging processes, you will see that the steel can is recyclable, its plastic lid isn't. The plastic container is also recyclable, but its plastic lid isn't. And then there's a flexible pouch, and none of that is recyclable. But look at the energy consumption associated with these different methods of packaging. The energy consumption from producing a steel can is really high, and it's even higher from the plastic container. The flexible pouch is relatively lower. Then if you look at the CO2 emissions from the production of that packaging, you see again that the steel can has a higher level of emissions associated with its production. The plastic container has less, but it's still higher than the non-recyclable flexible pouch. And then finally, because we're talking about how people are focused on keeping materials out of landfills, because unfortunately stuff still goes to landfills and even recyclable stuff ends up in landfills, there are more steel cans in our municipal solid waste stream, generating a large amount of waste. likewise plastic containers, and then finally, these flexible pouches, because they're simply made of less material, account for a lot fewer pounds of waste in our waste stream. So when DEQ saw this example and others like it, we started wondering, how well do these popular attributes like the ability to recycle a material or have a material that's compostable actually align with lower impact choices? So here's that life cycle of materials again. And what everyone wants is we want to reduce the negative impacts, cumulative energy demand, freshwater consumption, global warming, and so forth, shown here on the left. We want materials that require less electricity and water. We want materials that reduce our contribution to global warming, human toxicity, and so forth. But most of us don't know how to evaluate all of these individual impacts. So instead, we turn to easy to understand and popular attributes like the ones shown here. We look at recycled content, bio-based content, compostability, and such. And just about everybody assumes that these attributes are reasonable proxies for environmental goodness. That is, if you follow them, you can't go wrong. Will be sustainable. But DEQ was aware of several examples where this wasn't true, like that coffee example, and we got to wondering just how valid these assumptions were across the board. So we asked ourselves this question: how well and when do popular material attributes correlate with reduced environmental impacts? And under what conditions might they be helpful for informing environmental strategies, and under what conditions do they result in harmful unintended consequences? We felt it was really important to answer this question because these attributes are being used now in really big and important ways. Oops. So we did, because we're DEQ, we did research. What we did is we went out and we literally collected all of the quantitative environmental assessments of materials that we could find. We reviewed the last 17 years worth of global assessments of these environmental impacts of different packaging and single-use food service items, looking for studies that quantified the climate impact, the toxic impact, and so forth of these different choices. And we looked for studies that had compared these materials with popular attributes against materials that lack those attributes. And as you might guess, that was a lot of data and the results are quite complicated, but I can give you a few examples of just what we found so that you can get a sense of what this research reveals. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is with the 20 studies that we found that made a total of 534 comparisons between packages with higher contents of recycled content against packages containing lower levels of recycled content. Now, sometimes businesses choose a material like cardboard, glass, or plastic, and then you have an option of increasing the recycled content of that material. For example, you could buy a glass bottle made from 10% recycled glass or a bottle made from 50% recycled glass. We found a bunch of studies that made these types of comparisons for a variety of packaging materials, and in total, almost all of those comparisons came to the same conclusion: increasing recycled content of any given material reduces environmental impacts. So this graph, which is called a Likert chart, displays those impacts. And in this chart, green is good, and red indicates negative impacts. And what you see is the evidence that I just stated is very clear from the last 17 years of research that we just viewed. Increasing recycled content is a good thing to do. So that's an attribute that you all should continue to pay attention to. But things get a little more complicated when we look at recycled content and we start trying to compare different materials. So what would happen if we compared two packages that provide the same function but are made of different materials and contain different levels of recycled content? For example, a steel container, which contains recycled content, versus a laminate container that contains only virgin materials. Both packages are fundamentally equivalent, yet exhibit dramatically different environmental profiles because of the environmental burdens associated with making those materials in the first place. So back to our Likert chart. And here you see the results of looking at a bunch of different studies that compared different packages based on their post-consumer recycled content. And while there's a lot of green, you see in this graph that there's a lot of red as well, and that sort of starts to trend toward a negative correlation. There's about, so the green means that the packaging with this attribute had lower impacts, while as I said before, the red means higher impacts. So the data we found in this comparison told us that this attribute, post-consumer recycled content, is not very useful. In other words, it doesn't consistently point in the direction of environmental benefits. And what that means is if you're choosing between two different packaging materials, recycled content is an attribute that doesn't tell you very much. So this is really the explanation for that EPA example that I provided earlier about why the foil pouch in coffee packaging might in fact be a better choice than the recyclable steel can. But now I want to share one more example because this is getting a lot of attention in our region, and that's compostable food serviceware like plates and cups. We found 7 studies that made a total of 363 different comparisons between compostable food serviceware that is composted and other types of single-service foodware. And these studies showed that the compostable products, and this is really interesting, even when composted, often resulted in higher environmental impacts than non-compostable items. That's all of the red you see on this chart. Red, again, means higher impacts. And it isn't because composting is bad. It's actually because the materials currently used to make compostable packaging often require more energy and result in more pollution than materials to create non-compostable food serviceware. So to be clear again, this isn't a criticism of composting. Composting is generally a very good thing to do with organic waste, but if you are choosing packaging or food service items because of how it is made and what it is made of, just because something is compostable, doesn't make it automatically the right choice from an environmental standpoint. As an aside, I should mention that most Oregon compost facilities don't even want compostable food serviceware and packaging because of the problems that that packaging creates with their processing systems and the quality of their finished compost product. So it's kind of a double whammy. And all of this research that I just discussed is published on our website, and we just got it up on the website about a month ago. So one of the things that all this research tells us, I'm going to back up quickly, one of the things all this research tells us is that the popular wisdom is always popular but isn't always wise. But second, it also tells us that as a society, we've probably been asking the wrong question. When it comes to material selection, we're too heavily focused on end of life, and we're not paying enough attention to the impacts of materials across its life cycle. What we should be doing is focusing on material selection and design in order to reduce environmental impacts holistically. So now I'm going to close with an example of how we can actually do that. And that's to talk a little bit about concrete. Concrete is a material that is associated with lots of emissions, and it's heavily consumed, but it also has a lot of potential from a material standpoint. It's locally produced, which means that we can have an impact on decisions made with regard to it. It has an engaged industry, and there are cost-effective materials and methods to lower the impact of concrete. These typically involve substituting a portion of the cement, which is the key ingredient and which has a very, very high impact to produce, and for which there are alternatives. With substitute materials, the carbon footprint of concrete can often be reduced anywhere from 20 to 50%. But if you are buying concrete, how can you specify that you want low-carbon concrete? And Oregon has a lot of different concrete plants, each of which can produce hundreds of different concrete mixes. So if you're a consumer, if you're in charge of building a building or laying sidewalks in your community, how do you, or even they, know how to mix a concrete mix that is a lower impact mix and that will still perform? One solution is to use something called an Environmental Product Declaration, or EPD. So just like the nutrition label on your cereal box, an EPD will report environmental impacts such as energy use or global warming potential of a product across its entire life. For different concrete mixes, these are not, in fact, difficult to calculate. DEQ has been working with the Oregon Concrete and Aggregate Producers Association to make available to every concrete producer in Portland a new software tool that allows them to easily calculate the carbon footprints of different mixes and to disclose them using a third-party verified EPD, so that the people who they're dealing with and who they're trying to sell their concrete to can feel confident that they're getting a concrete mix that's a lower impact. And this can be really important and is already being used. Buyers are starting to ask for this kind of thing. In Multnomah County, we're putting up a new courthouse building, and the specs of that courthouse require use of EPDs for all of the concrete mixes in that building. It's too early to tell if this model will work for other materials and if it will drive types of upstream design changes that are needed, but it's an interesting example, and one that we're working on today. Which brings me to really the final comment I wanted to make today, because we're here at a ceremony to recognize sustainable business leaders, and that's to close with a reflection on leadership. You're all here to be honored or to honor your peers for this kind of leadership. And when it comes to achieving a sustainable world, we have our work cut out for us. The challenges are daunting and complex. Saving the environment isn't going to be quite as easy as we might have been led to believe, and there are some people out there who say it's impossible. But the same was said of running the 4-minute mile. Prior to 1954, it was widely considered to be unachievable. Many experts said that breaking the record was humanly impossible. It was an elusive goal that no one would ever achieve. Then Roger Bannister broke that 4-minute mile in 1954. And once he broke the record, it was broken again about 2 months later. And today, we have high school kids who run 4-minute miles. The point is that what our society once thought was impossible can, in fact, be achieved. And that's what leaders do. And once it's achieved, others will follow. So thank you to all of you, award winners and non-award winners alike, for being leaders in sustainability. Achieving sustainability is a journey as much as it is a destination. Wherever you are on that journey, thank you for taking it, and thank you for moving forward.
And now for your next moment. I got the toughest job in the world.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for being with us and for presenting such great material. I think part of being a sustainable business leader is constantly growing in knowledge and finding ways to support our community. All of our award winners today actually have that theme in common, that they value the community that they live and work in, and they create opportunities not just in their business, but for those around them, their staff and their consumers. And I'm going to bounce a little on up here. So I wanted to start today to talk about our small and local businesses. In any community, small businesses are really what creates the strong core of the economy. These are folks that move into our communities, they create opportunities, they become our neighbors, they become leaders, and they become innovators. I am just getting to know a lot of our EarthWISE businesses, and I am always impressed at the level of commitment and innovation in Marion County. We have a lot to be proud of here in reduction, recycling, upcycling, and just how we care for one another and how we care for our community. Our EarthWISE winner has been a trailblazer in the small business community, resulting in a stellar reputation of care and environmentally friendly practices. The wellness and beauty industry provide to clients self-care, which we all know is crucial for stress reduction and peace of mind. Our winner, with their passion to providing the best care for their clients, goes above and beyond creating natural and pampering experiences. They create treatments that are non-toxic, natural, sustainable, and take the knowledge of the industry and their excitement, and it shines through in every detail of their business. Our winner has shown this commitment since becoming EarthWISE certified in 2012. In everyday office practices, this team is on point with routines that put reduction, reuse, and recycling in the forefront, but the love of their industry shines in the above and beyond approach to the natural products that produce less waste, low toxicity, and create sustainable and ethical practices. Our winner was the first business in Salem to bring a natural waxing product called sugaring, which is so fascinating, you need to read up on that, that cuts standard waste in waxing and salon services by 99%. With the gamut from running from vegan-friendly nail polishes to using alternatives to paraffin wax, our winner's philosophy is to seek out the most natural products, even if that means more cost to her business. She does that because she cares about her clients, she cares about her staff, and she cares about how to move forward and create better opportunities in this industry. From a client experience where they receive the best, they're receiving pampering without additional packaging or unwanted chemicals. So from bulk buys that reduce waste to bills, to trash bills and upcycling beautiful nail polish bottles into lighting, our winner is a leader in bringing green practices and wellness to Salem. We are excited to announce our 2019 Green Award winner, FizzSpa. Erin, can you come on up? Show a little bit more. Just a little. You. I don't know if you want to say a little, or I don't know if you have.
Gosh, that you
Or
said.
just introduce yourself. You're awesome.
Hi, I'm Erin Molyneux, owner of FizzSpa, and we've been in existence for almost 10 years. And that was really well said and touching and true. So if you have any questions about that sugaring, it's really fascinating. And we'd love to have you visit our spa. Obviously, it's a win-win. Again, because you get a great service and then you get to know that you're doing something great in our community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Yes, as I got to learn more and more about what Erin and her team does, it is just fascinating to look at how we can really create these industries that have these products that do less harm or do no harm. So thank you, Erin. We're going to move to our large business of the year. And our EarthWISE Large Business of the Year proves that sustainability is not just confined to an office, but can create a community within. Since 2009, our winners have dedicated a decade to waste reduction and conservation and community. From sustainable purchasing to reduction of paper products and community-wide recycling, plus food composting, which is big for me, their efforts have reduced the amount of trash pickups in their community. They have sparked discussions with young and old and have created this idea of what do we do next? How do we do it better? How do we dig deeper? Quality of life is part of sustainability, and the quality of life is enhanced by the sustainability focus of this team. Their work is setting is a serene environment, native plants with starts they have started on their own grounds using compost from their own food waste. Their training manuals are now online to reduce the use of paper, and they create a central location for information for their staff. Their buildings have received a facelift, massive upgrades with energy-efficient lighting, new siding, windows, and door replacements. Not only are they reaping the benefits of those energy savings, but the investment in those they serve is truly what wins here. So for these reasons and so many more, our 2019 winner is Willamette Lutheran Retirement Community. And do I have someone from Willamette? Yay! Come on up. Hi. Let's warn people because I'm clumsy. Yes, come on in. Hey, thank you guys so much. You guys have a few things.
I wrote something so I wouldn't forget. So, thank you so much for this award and recognition. Willamette Lutheran Retirement Community is dedicated to the preservation of our environment and honored to be certified as an EarthWISE program, part of this program. So since the certification in 2009, we are committed to educating our staff and residents in our community. And yeah, the recycling program goes way beyond the recycling of paper and other recyclable items such as the batteries, oils, computers, and others. But we are very conscientious in being a green community, and so thank you. So, and as the Director of Marketing and Admissions at Willamette Lutheran, I can tell you there are so many benefits to besides being recognized in the newspapers and TV and all that. You know, we are very proud to be part of this program, and it's well worth it, and it's, in the long run, very cost-effective, and so thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you for your patience. We're running a little bit over today, but we'll get you out of here on time. Of course, we still have the big raffle to go. So this year we have 2 awards, and one is Educator of the Year Award, and I could take the next 15 minutes or more talking about this person, but I won't. But they spend endless hours with their students providing a variety of support, educational opportunities, from movie nights about plastics to working on educational pieces during their lunch hour, to filling stations for water bottles, hosting No Impact Week, overseeing the green schools, making alternatives gifts during the holidays, and then that's just the tip of the iceberg, along with many, many other outdoor opportunities for kids. I've had the opportunity to go to Opal Creek with their kids and see the great research and the great work they do as well. So please extend your congratulations to this year's Educator of the Year, Dottie Connect from South Salem High School.
Thank you.
As a former educator, I can't tell you how many hours and what dedication it takes to put in the programs and the opportunities that she provides for her students. So thank you, Dottie. And now our Volunteer of the Year Award is someone you're probably familiar with. You often see in the background of their work. They started recycling at a young age, riding their bicycle up and down the roads, collecting bottles before there was a bottle bill. an early master recycler, I think 2001, and has spent over 300 hours since then doing volunteer work. She's great at providing support for those that are interested in running sustainable meetings and supporting sustainable programs. And today, there's a table set over there for food waste that she's organizing and a part of that as well. Countless hours, countless volunteer work that she's done, well-deserving of Volunteer of the Year award. Please extend your congratulations to Judy Skinner. Judy?
Yeah, I usually am hiding in the back somewhere. So we've got a table and all the food scraps are gonna go feed some chickens. And we have real tablecloths and real napkins and real dishes, and that's all great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Judy. And again, it was interesting as I selected these award winners to see all the work that they've done, pages and volumes of things. And so you've just heard a small piece of their work. So I would like at this point to kind of wrap things up. May have a few closing comments, but we'll keep those to 1 or 2 words. And we do have raffle drawings, so if you have your tickets with you, there are bags on the back table. There's 2 bottles of wine in each bag. You get the whole bag, 1 red and 1 white. They're each very good wines, $32 I think each. Bethel Heights donated those, so thank you to Bethel Heights Winery for that. So with your tickets, I'm just going to read the last 3 digits and you can give a woohoo and head back and get that. So the first winner is 738. 738. Anyone? Judy, nice. No? Oh, not. Oh, 738. Wow. Oh, it is 738. Oh, it's Roxanne's. Well, don't tell her. You can take 1 bottle out. The next one is 703. 703. Oh, we got a winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. The next one is 772. Or no, excuse me. 672. Someone just had a heart attack. 672. We got a winner back there. The next one is 662. 662. Oh, nice. Good job, Gail. Half of that's mine. Next one is 712. 712. Oh, no, yay. And one more. Got one more. This is 740. 740. All right, those folks can pick theirs up. And Rachel, do you have any final words other than a great thank you for coming out?
Again, if you are part of our EarthWISE network, thank you so much for all you do in Marion County. For supporters and friends, thank you for enjoying our lunch and enjoying time with us. We look forward to opportunities to connect again. And if folks have wondered why the part of Alan Pennington is being played by Rachel Van Wert, I want to do a plug for Alan. He is still with Marion County doing our Master Recyclers program. If you're not yet a Master Recycler and interested in the program, please connect with Alan. It's a great program. Thank you all for coming and have a great day.
If you want your picture taken, which you should, you can go back there to the green screen and you never know what they're going to put behind it. That'll be on Facebook, so you can go back there or stay and visit amongst yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.